Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. As you can tell from the title of this video, I'm gonna show you a dupe of the Natasha Denona Gold palette today. This time is from the brand called Sheglam, which is Shein's own brand of makeup. This is most definitely not the first time you see this palette, but this is how the Natasha Denona Gold palette looks like. On the outside is a really shiny gold color, and when you open it up, you have 15 shades inside, mainly cool toned brown colors, but also quite a few gold shades. Now this can vary from a bronzy gold to a yellow gold, a white gold, and you also get some green gold shades in here, which are actually my personal favorites. And for some variety, they also gave us two blue shades. One of them is a satiny matte shade and the other one is a shimmery one. Now this is probably my favorite palette from Natasha Denona, and I think most people's as well. This is, I believe, her most well-made palette, and I didn't personally have a problem using any of the shades. I'm not utterly impressed by all of them, but they're all good quality. Now, are they good enough to justify the price point though? Well, that's another question. Now this is how the Sheglam palette looks like. As you can see, it's a matte brown palette with the Sheglam logo printed on it in gold. It comes without a mirror, unlike the Natasha Denona one. And as you can see, you get 15 shades, and these are exactly the same 15 shades you get in the Natasha Denona palette, meaning they did their best to copy every single shade. They did slightly switch them up though, so they're not all in the same position. And whilst the Natasha Denona palette has the names of the shades on this little plastic sheet that's inside the palette, the names of the shades in the Afterglow palette actually come on a separate sheet that can be lost quite easily. But honestly, if you just want to use this eyeshadow palette without wanting to refer to the names of the shades, you have absolutely no reason wanting to know them, so you're gonna be absolutely fine using it without knowing the shade names. But if you do want to know, you will need to keep in mind to keep this plastic sheet inside the palette, because otherwise you're quite likely to lose it. Now before we carry on, I want to show you the swatches very quickly. As always, I swatched the original palette on the bottom and the dupe shades on the top of it. I must say that I was very pleasantly surprised with the performance of this Afterglow palette. The matte shades were honestly almost as good as the original. I was really happy with them. I must say that the shimmery shades did lack that pigmentation, that butteriness some of the times, whilst some other shades were completely fine, exactly the same as the original, or sometimes even better. With the Natasha Denona palette, you get 24 months shelf life, and you get 2.5 grams of product in each pan. Over the 15 pans, it gives you 37.5 grams of product overall. I must say that that is quite a lot, and it's not something that you usually see from other companies, so I feel like it's quite an unfair expectation to ask the dupe company to give you this much product, because honestly speaking, I don't think you need this much product. As an average user, you are not gonna be able to go through this much product and hit pan on every single one within the time frame given to you, which is, like I said, in this case 24 months. At this point, I had this eyeshadow palette for more than a year, and I hardly even touched some of the shades, so you really don't need this much. And I do feel like that the only reason Natasha Denona can justify the price point of these eyeshadow palettes is because of how much product you get. I think we would all be completely fine if she just cut the pen sizes into half, along with cutting the price into half, because this palette is £111 or $125 in the USA. That is a lot of money. Some of her other eyeshadow palettes only cost £60, and I think they are much more popular with people because of how much more affordable they are. And honestly, if you think of them as a £60 eyeshadow palette, which is on par with what Jeffree Star and Huda Beauty eyeshadow palettes cost, then it is a really good eyeshadow palette. But if you put them into that £111 price range, then people will start comparing them to Pat McGrath eyeshadow palettes, and these Natasha Denona palettes would 100% fail in that case because they are not nearly as good as the Pat McGrath eyeshadow palette. So I think she should definitely redesign these palettes, cut the size in half, cut the price in half, and everyone would be much happier. The Sheglam eyeshadow palettes have roughly half of the product in them, 18 grams in total, which is a little bit more than a gram of product in each pan. I think that's a completely fair enough size. It's still double of what you get from an Anastasia Beverly Hills eyeshadow palette. Whilst the Natasha Denona palettes are made in Italy, this palette was made in the People's Republic of China, and it has 12 months shelf life, which is also half of what you have with the Natasha Denona one. The price point is a lot less than half though. It costs you £6.99 minus the all sorts of discounts you can get when you're using Shein. I think a 15 to 20% discount is quite standard with Shein, so even that £6.99 is not what you're realistically going to pay. It is going to be about £5.50, £6. Now, as you can probably tell, I did create one of my eyes today using the dupe palette, and I am so pleased with the results. No one on this planet could tell that I'm using two different eyeshadow palettes, and I didn't at any point feel like the Natasha Denona palette was superior compared to the Sheglam palette. This is a really, really good palette, you guys. Considering the price point especially, they basically make the gold palette available for everyone, and for me, personally, this is the best dupe of the Natasha Denona palette I have tried so far. I have another video up on my channel where I seriously went out of my way to get hold of a dupe palette that's not available outside of the US. Altogether, I spent about £60 just to get this dupe palette, which is about $80 to $90, so it's almost the same price I spent on the actual Natasha Denona palette. I was crazy about it. I just wanted to know if it's really as good as they say. By the way, the palette we're talking about here is the Alter Ego version, and it was a good palette. However, I honestly feel like this Sheglam palette is just as good. So in my opinion, if you've ever been interested in the Natasha Denona Gold palette, but you don't have the money to purchase it, which is probably the reason why you're here watching this video, this Sheglam dupe is amazing, and you should definitely give it a go because you will basically get the same you would have gotten from the Natasha Denona palette. It's really, really good. Without further ado, I want to get into showing you the footage I have of me creating today's eye makeup look. As always, I was using the dupe palette on this side of the face and the original one on this side of the face. And I see no difference, and honestly, I did not feel the difference at any point. I didn't have to work harder with the dupe palette to build up the shades. I am just so pleased. First, I took the shade Aria from the Gold palette, which is the lightest brown shade you have in this palette, and I started building it up on the crease, focusing on the outer corner. In the Afterglow palette, this shade is called Soft Glam. I did exactly the same, and I was immediately very, very happy with this because it did not drag, it wasn't patchy, it wasn't falling all over my face. I was able to build it up where I wanted to, which is normally absolutely not the case with dupe palettes, and that's what I expected from this palette as well, to be honest. But it gave me the exact same results I got on the Gold palette side. When I was done with this, I took the shade Log, which is the darkest brown in the Gold palette, and I really started darkening up the outer corner. This shade is called Truffle in the Afterglow palette. And you guys, this shade was even easier to build up than the shade Log. Now, I must say though that when I started blending it out, I did have a lot of it falling on my face, but then I was able to grab more and go back and build it up again, and it worked. When I was done building up the outer corner, I took some concealer and I did a half cut crease. On top of the half cut crease, I applied the shade Brass, which is this gorgeous green gold shade. On the Afterglow side, this shade is called Glitz. After this, I took a bit more of Aria again. Once again, on the Afterglow side, it's called Soft Glam. And basically on both sides, I made sure that the dark brown shade and this green gold shade have some sort of a transition. And the last thing to do was to add some of this white gold topper shade in the inner corner of my eye. I applied sparks on the Natasha Denona side. This shade is called Rose Quartz in the dupe palette, and I have to say that I like the white shade in the Afterglow palette a billion times more than the Natasha Denona one. Now on the other hand though, there are shades in the Afterglow palette that don't perform as good as the Natasha Denona shades do. Just to name some, you have this shade called Lime Chrome in the gold palette, and it's a quite gorgeous duochrome shade. We had something very, very similar to it in the Anastasia Beverly Hills Subculture palette, and I did really, really like that shade, so I was really happy to have something similar in this palette as well. And as you can see in the Afterglow palette, I already hit pan with this shade, and the reason is not because I used so much of it, but because it's a quite gooey shade, meaning that when you put your finger into the pan, it starts heating up and the pigment just starts moving around. So when I kept doing this, I basically pushed the eyeshadow into the corners and I have nothing left in the center. Nevertheless, this is a quite bad performing shade. This is how it looks like when you swatch it. As you can see, it looks slightly darker, even though it looked like exactly the same shade in the pan. And the reason being is because you don't have that shimmer to it. It is a very, very disappointing shade. As you can see, I had the exact same problem with both of the blue shades, which is again really sad because I do actually quite like those shades in the gold palette. I do see though what they were trying to achieve here, because the blue shade in the gold palette also has a very interesting consistency, and I think they were trying to copy that. It just didn't really go well. This is the blue shade called Python in the Natasha Denona palette, and this is the blue shade called After Party in the Afterglow palette. As you can see, it just doesn't have that same pigmentation to it. You really have to keep going back a couple of times and build it up to have the same color. So definitely, like I said, not everything is better here. However, this is the shade Sparks in the Natasha Denona palette, and this is the shade Rose Quartz in the Afterglow palette. Like honestly, how much better is that? It's just so much more beautiful, and I can totally see myself using this white in my inner corner or on the brow bone. This shade in the gold palette is completely useless. So once again, the Afterglow palette was a very positive surprise for me. I did not expect Shein to put out such a good palette, and I'm really looking forward to testing out some other Sheglam eyeshadow palettes for sure. I think it's a really, really good palette. Not every shade is amazing, but for the price point, I was really happy with what they gave us. I honestly chose random shades to create today's eye makeup look. I was not trying to get the best shades and somehow sell you this palette. I'm not by any means affiliated with Shein or Sheglam, so I had no reason to do that. But honestly, this is such a good palette. It's really accessible for all of us because I believe Shein basically ships anywhere on the world. And like I said, I'm really, really looking forward to testing out some other eyeshadow palettes from them. I hope they are just as good as this one. That's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because I would love to have you here. And until next time, take care of yourself. I will see you very soon. Bye.